Hey everyone, Vietnam, right. It's been buzzing as a sourcing hotspot. We're going to take a deep dive into it today.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
We've got some sources you guys have been digging into, that document titled Copy of a Spotify Summary and Prompt, and also that article, Vietnam's Economy, Key Facts You Need to Know.
Uh-huh.
So we're on a mission today, uncover what's making Vietnam tick, what's driving their success, and
Okay.
what it all means for businesses, especially for folks like you interested in sourcing.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most striking things about Vietnam is it's been on this upward trajectory. I mean, for like over 2 decades.
Wow.
They've been averaging consistently 6 to 7% growth.
Consistently.
Yeah. And in 2022, they hit 8.02%.
Okay, that's impressive, but what's the big deal? Why should we even care?
Those are big numbers for sure, but it's more than just numbers. Vietnam is really bucking global trends. I mean, they're showing this resilience and dynamism that's kind of hard to ignore. It's like a flashing sign that says, hey, opportunity is knocking.
So it's not just about the numbers themselves, it's what they represent.
Exactly.
And one thing that really jumps out from the research is Vietnam's dominance in manufacturing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you've got global giants, Samsung, Nike, Toyota. They're all setting up shop there.
Exactly. And they're not just going there to just be a manufacturing hub. It's interesting the specific industries that they're excelling in.
Right.
Electronics, textiles, footwear. I mean, they're attracting these big players for a reason. I think it's a combination of things, skilled labor, competitive costs, and that strategic location.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's not just about making things, it's making the right things.
Yeah, exactly.
The things that the global market wants. And speaking of demand, Vietnam's export market is on fire.
It's exploded.
A record-breaking $372 billion in 2022.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
I mean, that's a lot of coffee, a lot of clothes, electronics.
It is. But that kind of export success doesn't happen by chance. Vietnam's been very strategic.
Yeah.
They've been securing trade agreements like the CPTPP and EVFTA, and these agreements have just opened doors to these new markets. It's like they've given Vietnamese businesses this competitive edge.
So it's like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
They're making those in-demand products, and
Right.
they've got the trade agreements to actually get them out there, get them all over the world.
Exactly.
But it's not all about, just turning out products in factories, right?
Hmm.
There's more to it. The research also mentions Vietnam's tech sector.
Absolutely.
It's rapidly growing.
Yeah, this is where you can really see Vietnam kind of moving beyond that label of just being the world's factory.
Yeah.
They're stepping into these higher value industries.
Right.
Companies like Intel and LG, they're investing heavily. And even local companies like VinFast are making a splash in the electric vehicle market.
VinFast, that's a great example.
Yeah.
I was just reading about their, ambitions to be a major player in that global EV market. I mean, they're not just putting cars together, they're actually designing, developing cutting-edge technology.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that tech boom is also creating this ripple effect,
Yeah.
attracting investment, fostering innovation, and it's really boosting other parts of the economy too.
So it's like this interconnected ecosystem
Yeah,
where manufacturing and tech, they're feeding off each other, creating this dynamic market that's constantly evolving. It's not just about cheap labor anymore.
exactly.
It's skilled talent and technological advancement.
And speaking of talent, Vietnam has this incredibly youthful and skilled workforce.
Yeah.
Over half the population is under 35, and get this, they're producing like 100,000 engineering graduates every year.
100,000. Wow. No wonder companies are flocking there.
It's a huge talent pool.
But let's not forget about geography.
Yeah.
Vietnam's location seems to play a key role in its success, too, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's perfectly situated in Southeast Asia. They have easy access to major shipping routes. They're close to, key markets like China.
Uh-huh.
That kind of geographic advantage, it's a dream for businesses. They can really optimize their supply chains, reach their customers efficiently.
It's like perfect timing and perfect location all rolled into one.
Yeah.
But it's not all about location and demographics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Vietnamese government has been very proactive about attracting foreign investment.
Oh, absolutely. They've put in place a series of pro-business reforms. I mean, most notably the Doi Moi reforms back in 1986.
Doi Moi, yeah, I've heard that term, but What exactly did these reforms change?
Well, Doi Moi was a big shift. They went from a centrally planned economy to a more market-oriented one.
Okay.
They introduced private ownership. They started encouraging foreign investment. They simplified regulations just to make it easier for businesses to operate in Vietnam.
So it wasn't just some random surge in growth. It was a very deliberate strategy.
Exactly. It was a plan to open up and modernize the economy.
That makes a lot of sense. But even with all these positive things going on, there's got to be some challenges, right?
Well, you're right. No market is without its challenges. Vietnam's infrastructure has improved a lot,
Uh-huh.
but it's still a work in progress.
Right.
Transportation and logistics can be tricky, and navigating those regulations can be complex.
So businesses need to do their homework,
Yeah.
understand the market, and maybe even partner up with local experts to navigate those complexities.
Exactly. Having a local partner who understands all the ins and outs of the Vietnamese market can be really, really valuable.
Right. They can provide insights, help you connect with reliable suppliers,
Yeah.
help you overcome those logistical challenges. So, okay, we've covered a lot. Vietnam's impressive economic growth, the manufacturing, the booming export market, the rise of the tech sector,
Right?
the workforce, the location, and the government's policies. It's a pretty compelling story.
Yeah.
But there's another layer here, right? We've got to consider the human impact, the environmental impact of this growth.
Absolutely. I mean, achieving economic prosperity shouldn't come at the expense of the people or the planet. We have to look at both sides of the coin to really get the full picture.
That's where we'll dive in next, right?
Exactly.
Exploring those human and environmental aspects of Vietnam's economic boom. We'll look at the challenges and the opportunities for businesses to operate responsibly. Stay tuned.
We were just talking about all those factors driving Vietnam's economic success, but like you said, we need to look at the other side of the coin.
Right, the human impact, the environmental impact.
Exactly, because economic growth can't come at the expense of people or the planet. Right.
Absolutely not. So
Sure.
let's unpack this a little bit. What are some of those social and environmental challenges that Vietnam is dealing with as it goes through this intense growth period?
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns is income inequality.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the economy has grown a lot, but not everyone's benefited equally.
Right.
And there's this risk of the gap between the rich and the poor widening, especially in rural areas where access to opportunities and resources is limited.
So it's like this, almost like a two-speed economy.
Yeah.
Some sectors and regions surging ahead while others lag behind.
Yeah.
It's like a classic challenge.
It is. It's a challenge for a lot of... Oh, absolutely. Climate change is a huge threat. Rising sea levels, extreme weather events, you name it.
It could derail all their progress.
Yeah, and the government is trying to address it. They're promoting renewable energy, investing in infrastructure that can withstand climate change, participating in international agreements to cut those carbon emissions.
That's a big task.
It's a huge task. It requires effort from everyone.
It sounds like Vietnam is walking a tightrope, trying to balance its economic ambitions with the need to protect the environment,
Yeah,
ensure a sustainable future for its people. I mean, that's a tough equation.
it is a tough equation. And I think businesses operating in Vietnam, they have a really important role to play here.
Right. They can't just focus on profits.
Exactly. They need to operate responsibly. They need to contribute to sustainable development.
So ethical sourcing then.
Yes. Making sure that their operations are environmentally sound, that they're treating their workers fairly, that they're actually contributing to the communities where they're working.
Right. And consumers are getting more aware of this too.
Oh, absolutely.
Ethical sourcing is not just a nice thing to do, it's a must-do.
It is. Consumers are demanding transparency. They want accountability from the companies that they're supporting.
They're making choices based on their values.
Exactly. And Vietnam offers businesses this unique opportunity to really embrace ethical sourcing.
Okay.
The government's actively promoting sustainable development. There's this growing ecosystem of organizations and initiatives, all supporting responsible business practices.
So it's not just about avoiding those negative impacts.
It's about actively contributing to positive change.
Okay, so how are businesses actually doing this? Can you give us some concrete examples of how they're integrating ethical sourcing into their operations in Vietnam?
Yeah, a lot of companies are partnering with those local communities, to create sustainable livelihoods.
Uh,
They're investing in renewable energy sources so they can cut their carbon footprint. They're using circular economy models to reduce waste.
Right.
And they're making sure there are fair labor practices across their entire supply chain.
It seems like there's a real shift happening. Like businesses are realizing that ethical sourcing makes good business sense too.
Absolutely. Investing in sustainability is a smart business strategy these days.
Yeah.
It can really boost their reputation, attract better talent, reduce risks, and open up new markets.
So it's good for everyone. It's about creating this virtuous cycle
Exactly.
where economic growth, social progress, and environmental sustainability all work together.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ideal scenario. Vietnam has the potential to be a real model for this kind of sustainable development.
That's an inspiring vision.
Yeah,
But let's be real for a second. I mean, there are going to be roadblocks along the way.
of course.
What are some of those roadblocks that businesses and policymakers face as they try to reach these sustainability goals?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is awareness and capacity. A lot of businesses, especially the small and medium-sized ones, just don't have the knowledge or the resources to actually implement ethical sourcing.
So education is key then.
Yeah, it's about providing those businesses with the tools, the information they need.
To make that transition to more sustainable operations.
Exactly.
What about the role of the government? Are there policies and regulations in place to encourage this?
Yeah, the government has made good progress in developing a legal framework that promotes sustainable development and responsible business. They've got environmental protection laws, labor standards, regulations on corporate social responsibility.
So there's a foundation there.
Yeah,
But maybe the enforcement, the implementation of those regulations could be stronger.
that's a good point. I mean, while the rules are there, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
In terms of making sure people are following them and monitoring it properly, it's important that those regulations are practical, especially for those smaller businesses.
It sounds like everyone needs to work together. The government, businesses, civil society organizations, international partners.
Absolutely. It's a shared responsibility. It requires a multi-stakeholder approach. And that's where our listeners, those interested in sourcing from Vietnam come in.
Right, they have a choice.
They have a voice, a choice in shaping ethical sourcing in this market.
They can choose to work with businesses that are committed to those ethical and sustainable practices.
Exactly.
And that brings up the whole issue of transparency and traceability.
Right.
How can businesses make sure that what they're sourcing from Vietnam is actually produced ethically and sustainably?
That's a great question. And thankfully, new tools and technologies are emerging to help with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, blockchain, for example, can actually track the journey of those products from raw materials all the way to the finished goods. You get a verifiable record of where it came from and how it was made.
So we're using technology to make the supply chain more transparent.
Exactly.
But technology alone's not enough, right?
Right.
We still need those ethical decisions, the commitment to doing the right thing.
Oh, absolutely. Technology is just a tool. It's only as good as the people who are using it.
This has been an incredible conversation. I mean, we've explored Vietnam's economic miracle, the challenges of sustainable development, the importance of ethical sourcing. But I want to touch on one more thing.
Okay.
We've talked about businesses and governments, but what about the Vietnamese people themselves? How are they experiencing this transformation? What are their hopes for the future?
That's a fantastic question and the perfect way to move into the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We're going to delve into the human stories, explore the hopes and dreams, the challenges of the Vietnamese people as they navigate this period of change.
All right, so we're back, and we've been digging deep into Vietnam's economic boom, the good, the bad, and the importance of ethical sourcing. But now I think it's time to shift our focus to the people at the heart of it all, the Vietnamese people.
You're right. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers and forget that economic growth is really all about people.
It's about improving lives, creating opportunities. So let's hear those stories. How are the Vietnamese people experiencing this rapid economic change? What are they hoping for, dreaming of?
Well, one thing that really struck me is the incredible optimism and ambition you feel when you're in Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's this energy, this drive to succeed. They really believe in the future, and it's especially strong among the younger generation.
I can see that. I mean, they've grown up during this time of incredible growth, and they're ready to grab those opportunities.
Right. They're shaping the future. And that youthful energy, it's a big part of what makes Vietnam's economy so dynamic.
It's inspiring to see. But there must be challenges too, right? I mean, anxieties about the speed of change, things like that.
Of course. I mean, any rapid development brings social and cultural shifts. There's a tension between old traditions and new ways of doing things. And as we talked about before, income inequality is a real concern.
Right. Not everyone is benefiting equally from this growth. So are certain areas or communities being left behind?
Yeah, there is a gap between the urban and rural areas.
Uh-huh.
Cities are modernizing super fast, but rural communities often struggle. They might not have good access to education, healthcare, even basic infrastructure.
And that can lead to feelings of exclusion and resentment.
Exactly, and that needs to be addressed.
It's a good reminder that economic growth is just a tool. It's not the end goal. It's about a better life for everyone. And that requires looking at the whole picture, the social, the environmental, the cultural factors.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not just about material wealth, it's about things like education, healthcare, being able to move up in society, having a meaningful life.
Absolutely. It's about creating a society where everyone can thrive.
Hmm.
So how does this human perspective, understanding the hopes and dreams of the Vietnamese people, how does that affect our approach to sourcing from Vietnam?
It's a huge factor. We can't just focus on finding the cheapest option or the fastest production times. It's about partnering with businesses that share our values.
Right, companies that treat their workers fairly, invest in their communities.
Exactly. It's about looking beyond the bottom line, thinking about the people behind the products, choosing partners that are helping to build a better future for Vietnam, not just taking advantage.
And that means building strong, long-lasting relationships built on trust and respect.
Right, recognizing that every sourcing decision has an impact.
It's not just about checking off boxes on some corporate responsibility list. It's about actually caring and making a positive impact.
And that often means moving away from seeing sourcing as just a transaction. We need a more human-centered approach.
We need to remember that behind every product are real people with their own hopes and dreams. This has been a really eye-opening deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
We've covered so much, the economic miracle, the challenges, the role of ethical sourcing, and those personal stories. So for our listeners out there who are interested in sourcing from Vietnam, remember to keep the human element in mind.
That's the key takeaway here.
Work with partners who share your values, who are committed to doing things the right way, and who are contributing to a brighter future for Vietnam and its people. It's been fantastic having this conversation with you.
Likewise. And as Vietnam continues to grow and change, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how everything unfolds.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and a new perspective on your sourcing decisions.